live here in the Shenandoah Valley, in between Stanton and Waynesboro. This year has been very unusual, and we get these years maybe 1 out of every 3 years. Everything's been warm. The soil temperature is 57 degrees now, but a couple weeks ago we had very cold weather, down to 14 degrees. At that point in time, the crab apples and the Bradford pear, this is a crab apple, were just coming into bloom. Now they come into bloom with the flower buds first, then they produce foliage. So we came out after that cold weather and I looked at the buds and I said, wow, it looks like those buds have been damaged. These here still have flower buds, but they're not opening. Once the crab apple starts producing leaves, you're going to get no flowers. In this case, all the buds froze. So it affects the biggest thing, the honeybees. They love crab apples in the spring, but it's also, and there's a little bit of old fruit left right here, one of the old fruit. So every night, even now in the spring and also in the winter, I would walk out in the evening and there'd be deer feeding on the fallen crab apples. In addition to that, the robins, the mockingbirds, all these other birds that feed on the fruit, they're going to miss it this year because we're not going to have any fruit. So it's going to be a pretty big, devastating blow to wildlife. But once you start getting the foliage, remember, you're not going to have flowers. There really isn't any pruning I'm going to do now. I don't know if there's any damage, but if there's any other damage, you can prune that out by hand. Let's go look at some Bradford pears. I'm standing here in front of a field of wild invasive Bradford pears. Now, some of us have it in the garden. You can plant varieties that don't reseed and varieties that have a nice open shape. But due to a hard freeze, now a hard freeze is when you start getting down to 20 degrees, damaged all the flowers. These Bradfords were in full flower. It damaged all the flowers, and there's going to be no fruit on these this year, which feed the birds and feed the deer. So, at least they won't be seeding out from that fruit, but there's not much you can do for these Bradford pears when they freeze like this. And that's called a hard freeze. But if you have peaches, or if you have apples, or if you have desirable fruit trees, you can protect them if they're not too big. Even this you could protect. You can go ahead and cover it with a sheet and put a light sheet, you don't want anything heavy, and then tie it at the base of the tree. And then you're going to put an incandescent light bulb, like a 100-watt light bulb, not an LED light. You want something that gives off heat. And that will bring the temperature inside where your peaches and other fruit trees will not freeze. The one redeeming quality of Bradfords is that, and I see a couple here, is they're a great plant that attracts pollinators. And usually the Bradford pear is one of the few things in bloom that feed the honeybees. There'll be thousands of honeybees on each tree. But with the damage we experience, which is not common, 1 out of every couple years, there is no food for the honeybees. I'm Mark Viette. Join me next time in the garden.
For more garden tips, go to inthegardenradio.com.